Will you be remembered after you're dead? The Z-List Deadlist podcast about obscure people from history with me, Iszi Lawrence. I often scroll the internet. Other people surf, I scroll. That's because I'm old school, and as we know, surfing didn't really come into Britain until the 1950s. Mad Jack Churchill, I believe, was the first man to go down the Bristol Bore, if you recall that episode of the podcast starring Stephen Colgan, Mad Jack Churchill. He also was the guy who took a broadsword into battle in the Second World War. We'll be talking about the Second World War in a bit, but I'll get on to that. So this episode of the podcast is going to be a bit small. I am inundated with the work, but it is a good one. It is a nugget of an episode. You're going to like it. As I say, I was scrolling. I was going to say like an Egyptian, but they didn't really... They had papyrus scrolls. Shut up, Izzy. No, don't shut up. You are the podcast. Okay. I was looking around the internet, as you do, and I came across this little fact, that in the 13th century, when cardinals failed to elect a pope for 2 years, a hermit warned them of divine vengeance, and the cardinals elected him Pope Celestine V. And he refused, and he tried to flee, and after being persuaded, he wrote 2 decrees. Firstly, for fixing the papal elections, and secondly, allowing the Pope to resign. He then resigned. Unfortunately, they then imprisoned him until his death, so he didn't become the anti-pope. An anti-pope is a real thing. If you like hermits, of course, you can revisit the episode with Ben van der Velde about Raymond Lull, or Ramond Lull, who was also a hermit, but an inventor pretty much of the novel and of computer programming in the 13th century. It was big back then, wasn't it, this idea of being a hermit? People just running away, going, I can't stand it. I'm going to try and find myself in a cave. And for anybody worried about the anti-pope, don't worry, it's just anybody who says that they are the pope when they're not. That's all an anti-pope is. And the antidote to an anti-pope is therefore a pope. So, hurrah, going, no, you're not. I'm the real pope. And Slim Shady coming in and rapping about it. But another thing that came up was on Twitter. Now, I go on Twitter on occasion, hashtag not really enough, and you can follow me. I'm at ISZI_LAWRENCE, Iszi Lawrence. And this amazing little fact cropped up about a Typo winning the Second World War. So I got in touch with the lady who tweeted that, and it turns out we have a lot of mutual friends. And so I agreed to meet her at the British Museum, because I just basically live at the British Museum. It's a cool place to be. And we walked round the gallery, and I interviewed her. Yeah. So enjoy this little interview about typos. I do love the headless people. Yeah. Like queuing for the loo or something, and their crowns. It's a fun little gallery, this. Yeah. There's one, I'll show you it in a bit, there's a little head of a lady. Yeah. And she looks just like Stephen Fry.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, it's Stephen Fry, but ancient Greek. Oh. Okay, so...
I found my sister in a painting once. Anyway.
Did you?
By Van Dyke. Yeah.
Wow.
It was so weird.
That's pretty cool.
Uncanny resemblance.
Yeah, my friend Megan, there's a few of her.
Spooky.
And in there, Keanu Reeves, he's a time traveller.
Yes, yeah. He's in a lot of things.
He's just got a pretty face, and people like pretty faces.
Yeah, he's just got one of those faces.
You're more likely to get painted if you're pretty, which is why it's amusing that Stephen Fry, not saying that Stephen Fry isn't pretty, but I think it's just because clay's hard.
Yeah. It is a difficult medium.
But we are not going to talk about art, are we? We're talking about, like, science.
Oh.
Yeah. And I'm here with Florence Schecter.
That is my name.
Yeah, it's a good last name. It's one of those ones that you do sound like you should be in a crime novel.
Ooh, I like that.
It's a good, she goes through the night killing people. That sort of.
Oh, I didn't realise I was going to be the villain.
No, you're a suspect.
Okay.
You're one of the chief suspects that the detective is like confused about, and then you turn out to be a good person who gives like the last little detail.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good role, I like that.
That's a good one. Anyway, so we're not talking about that either.
Set the scene. It's World War II, right at the beginning. And there's this guy called Geoffrey Tandy who's working at the Natural History Museum at the time, and he wants to help the war effort. So he signs up to be a volunteer with the Royal Navy Reserves, and his paperwork goes through, and then they see his paperwork and they're like, oh my God, this guy is a leading expert he's a leading cryptogramist. Oh my God, he's a code breaker. We need to send him to Bletchley Park immediately. This guy, we need him there. He's got to crack the Enigma code. And so he...
The Enigma code is the code that the Nazis were using to communicate with each other.
Exactly, yeah. So, like, you put in... you have to like turn these cogs or something, and there's all these random connections, and you put in your message, and then it just spits out gibberish, and the gibberish changes every day, so it's really, really hard to crack. Bletchley Park, they were trying so hard and they just couldn't figure it out. They had the best people in the case, could not figure it out, resorted to recruiting people via crossword. And then this Jeffrey Tandy guy turns up, and they're like, oh my God. So they bundle him in to, a black windowed limousine, which I assume is, the only form of transport.
Obviously, this is the time. War,
No expense spared. And he turns up at Bletchley Park, and they plop the Enigma machine in front of him, and they're like, Jeff, my boy, you gotta crack it for us. Mm-hmm. You gotta do it. We're really struggling here, and you're like the best cryptogramist in the UK. And he's like, oh no. I see what's happened here. This is really awkward. Oh, you're really going to laugh, when you hear this. I'm not actually a cryptogrammist. I'm a cryptogamist. The difference being one is a code breaker, and the other is a specialist in spore-producing plants like ferns and lichens, and he is particularly an expert in algae. That was very fun.
That could help win the war, algae.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that's why he joined the Royal Navy, I assume, and not like the Air Force.
That makes sense.
There's no algae in the air.
There probably is tons of algae in the air, isn't there?
I don't know.
Exactly. This is the sort of thing that, we've got microbiologists going, actually.
Oh, yeah, it's true. I know there's loads of bacteria in the air.
Yeah.
Well, anyway. So they're like, I'm really sorry, mate, but Bletchley Park is supposed to be a secret, and we're going to be keeping it a secret for decades after the war. So you're just going to have to stay here. We can't risk you, being stationed somewhere else, being captured by the Germans, and you telling them about Bletchley Park. So you're just going to have to stay, I guess. And he...
Make the tea?
Yeah. No algae in it, please. And so he tries really hard, bless him. He tries to learn cryptography, but he's a biologist. He's not a mathematician, and he really doesn't do very well. He's kind of a bit lost. And he just hangs around, really. And then in 1941... the Allies sink a German U-boat, and they recover a ton of really important and cool stuff, like a ton of documents. And these documents, they have all this important information about like military strategy, and really importantly, they have a bigram table. And a bigram table is like what you use to decipher the messages that the Enigma machine is sending you.
It's not something from IKEA.
That would be good. So it arrives at Bletchley Park, but it's like soaking wet. It's absolutely destroyed by the seawater that it was floating in, and they barely can even open the notebooks without damaging the information. And they're basically like, oh well, I guess that's the end of it. So they're like, oh well, I guess we can't use it anymore. And then Jeffrey Tandy shows up. He's like, guys, I'm a cryptogamist. I'm literally drying out waterlogged samples is my speciality. This is what I've been trained to do at the Natural History Museum. So he dries out all these papers and stuff, and hands them over to Alan Turing. And if it weren't for him, they think the war would have been like 2 to 4 years longer. Like, that information that he recovered was so important to cracking the Enigma machine basically he saved millions of lives.
And it's all down to a typo.
All down to a typo. And the funny thing about it is that neither of these words are in common parlance anymore. So they're actually called cryptographers now. And cryptogams, which is that taxon of plants which reproduce via spores. So the idea is crypto means hidden, and gam means marriage. So the idea is they have babies, because you can only have babies when you're married. They reproduce, but you can't see them reproducing because there's no seeds, there's no, pips or whatever. And it's not a taxon that's used anymore. You don't have cryptogamists anymore.
Exactly. No cryptogramists, we might lose the next war. It'd be amazing if the next war was actually won by a defunct job. Maybe it'd be somebody who makes their living by putting mobile phones in sand Instead of drying out paperwork from a submarine, you're drying out your mobile using, like, rice, and not putting it on the radiator because you will damage it. Don't do that. Anyway, so that, as I say, was this episode of the Z-List Dead List. I know it was small, I know it was bijou, but it was all I could get out at the moment. I apologise for being a bit rubbish, but it is because I am making a lot of things. So you will be... I'm currently writing my TED Talk. I am also writing a book, and it's a fictional book, but it's historic fiction, so you'll love it. You'll love it. And I will... be back in May with another episode for you, and it will be a happy one, and all will be well. And I don't know if you can hear in my voice how tired I am right now, but I'm a bit dead to the world. So you have an amazing time. Hopefully the weather is changing, so you're either Australian and going from a nice hot summer into a coolish autumn, or you're American or British and you're going, oh, sunshine, the snow is melting, I can see blue skies. But I hope you have a lovely time. And a big thank you to Florence Schecter. You've been listening to the Z-List Dead List podcast with me, Iszi Lawrence. To support the show, share this episode with your friends, online, in person, why not? Why not in person? You can also visit izzy.com to find out about what more I've been doing, if I've been able to update the website. And yeah. I'm so tired.